Hi everyone, and today we're gonna have a knit and chat video. So the video will be more chatty than usual, as if my other videos are not chatty enough. But I'm trying to do a new format when I'm just sharing my opinions, inviting you for the conversation. And I think the topic I chose for today is very popular. I'm sure everyone thinks about it. We all have different opinions, but we all have opinion whether accumulating a stash, having too much yarn, or regularly buying yarn, using yarn purchase as the way to treat yourself, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or a neutral thing. Let's talk about this today. I'm going to be drinking my tea and finishing my crochet project. I'm notoriously bad for knitting and talking at the same time, so I might end up just talking. I don't know. We'll see about that. And if you're curious about that project, I just talked about it in my previous video, which is a knitting podcast number 3. So go check it out. Or you're probably going to see it in the knitting podcast number 4, which can be published at some point later. I hope after this video comes out. So if you're curious about this item, go there. Okay, I have some notes that I made for myself, and I'm going to start by sharing my experience, what's happening right now before I express some opinions. So I started knitting maybe 5 years ago or something like this. Actually, maybe more. Yeah, 5. I mean, like regularly. I did knit as a child a couple of times, but we're not counting that. And the idea is that from day one, I was not super, I don't know, I don't think I went crazy buying yarns for simple reason. Like where I live, I didn't have many yarn stores. I didn't actually even knew that anyone is knitting here in San Francisco. Later on, I learned that there are actually people who are knitting, but in the beginning, I didn't even know. I didn't even Google store on like online yarn stores. So I could only buy yarn online. And because the yarn online was quite expensive, I was like, okay, I'm not going to buy too much. So I don't think I had issues in the very beginning with like buying too much, but I definitely had issues with buying not the right yarn, which is quite normal, I think, for somebody who's starting, because you think like, oh, this is the yarn I need, or this is the amount of yarn I need, or this is the project I want to knit. You buy it, and then you end up understanding that this is not the right yarn, or it's just too difficult to work with, like something like that. I think it's quite normal. So whatever yarn you accumulate through your first year of knitting, I think this is quite normal that you might have something that you don't like in future. I guess the issue was that I didn't do anything about that yarn. I just kept accumulating more. And then I think my second year of knitting, when I started like self-drafting, trying things, I think I also went to a couple of like a knitting workshops and stuff like this. I also had this weird period in my life when I used knitting as like a kind of like I don't know, mental health, like a remedy, let's call it this way. So I don't know, I was lost in knitting. And because I was knitting every day for many, many hours, which is also normal for somebody who gets into something and gets like really like sucked in into new hobby. Because I was knitting for such a long hours, I was like, okay, it justifies me buying yarn because I was knitting a lot. So my second year my second year of knitting, I think I did buy like quite a lot of yarn. Again, I didn't think much about it because I was like, whatever, I'm like knitting a lot. But then I remember like in the middle of the second year, I had a fallout from knitting, but I had so much yarn that I bought before. I was like, oh my God, I need to finish it somehow. So I actually stopped buying new yarn. I was like, okay, I'm not going to buy any new yarn because I have so much. I just have to, use whatever I have. So my third year of knitting, I didn't buy much yarn. I just tried to reuse all the stash that that I accumulated by then. And this was also kind of weird. Like at the same time, it was like logical to just like use whatever you have. But by year 3, I had so much yarn that I accumulated my first year that I didn't like anymore. I didn't like the colors. I didn't like the texture. I didn't even like have any motivation to knit those projects that I bought that yarn for. And also the yarn I bought second year, I was kind of like, I was at that era when I was like, oh, I want to try this yarn. Oh, I want to like the fiber, oh, I want to try linen. I want to try, what did I buy? Tweed. I want to buy Donegal tweed. I want to buy this. I want to buy silk. I want to buy cotton. I just wanted to try fibers, which is, again, I think there are like two types. I know people hate when I split people into groups, but it's just easier. My mind likes to categorize things. It's just there are two types of people. Some people, they just find a pattern. The pattern calls for a particular yarn. They just buy this yarn. I don't know if you can hear this sound. It's really annoying, but it's my bird playing. And it's impossible to tell him to stop. I hope he eventually stops. Oh yeah, I was talking about. Yeah, I was talking about two types of people. So, there is a pattern they like. The pattern calls for particular yarn. These people don't waste money on experimentation. They just order the same yarn or like a similar yarn, whatever, the pattern calls for. And they just finish a garment, and they may not even have much stash, or maybe they have leftovers, or maybe they do sometimes buy this yarn, they don't like the color, they order another one. But in general, it's not that they have lots of yarn. They just buy for sake of, oh, I want to understand how to work with cotton. I want to understand how to work with yak yarn. This is me. And then there are two other type of people. They're not like into just producing the finished garment. They're more into, I don't know, for me, I like to learn new things. I like to explore. I like to understand how things work. I like to try things. I like to touch things, to see how it works. It's important for me to like understand. I can't just like, sometimes like I watch some channels when people just use one brand of yarn and they just follow one pattern designer. Let's say they use knitting for Olive and they, I don't know, follow all the patterns from my favorite knitwear or piece of knit, whoever. And I'm like, and I cannot truly understand it, not because I'm like criticizing these people or I'm thinking they're doing something wrong. I guess the food didn't work. It's just for me, like, I can't imagine myself in their shoes. I can't imagine myself just buying one brand of yarn and not like even like experimenting. Unfortunately, there is a downside to all this experimentation, but I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, so my third year of knitting, I was trying to reuse this stash I had, and I created lots of projects that I never finished. You probably watched this video on my channel, or if you didn't, I can link it down below, when I talked about some unfinished project that I had from 2021, 2022. And there were actually more projects to that than the one that I already unraveled like a year before. So basically, I was forcing myself to use this yarn while simultaneously not allowing myself to buy new yarn. And there's a big question, was it even a good idea? Instead of just enjoying this hobby, I was just, okay, I think we need to get rid of that toy because I don't think you guys will be able to hear me. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you will. So this is supposed to be knit and chat. Okay, no, we need to get rid of it. And then I think my fourth year of knitting, I wasn't knitting as much because I was working, plus I had to study on a new job. Or maybe it was not the fourth year or third year. Okay, the years are not important. So it's just stages. I started slowly buying the yarn because I realized like the projects I wanted to knit, they require different yarn. And then there is another specific that I buy yarn online, and I often, so I live in California, but I order the yarn from Europe, or even before I used to order yarn, for example, from Russia. So if you order from abroad, or I even order like from Lana Grossa website, if you order from abroad, it makes sense to order a lot because, otherwise the shipping is just too expensive. Or sometimes they offer free shipping if you order a certain amount. And you think like, okay, I might just as well order it. So at some point, especially like every winter, I would get into this, I need, all my yarn I have, I don't like it. I have all these projects I want to knit. So I would start ordering yarn. And then I would, I think the last 2 winters, I got into this extreme, like, I don't know, I just could not satisfy myself. It was almost like addiction. I would buy yarn and I would order more and more and more and more until like a couple of months later, I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It can't be like that. And then I would stop buying altogether until like the next, maybe like half a year later or like 10 months later, I would get into another like almost like, I would almost go into this like crazy spree of buying, then non-buying, buying, non-buying. It's funny. I'm still on the same row because I was at the moment when I needed to look down because there's something about me I don't really need without looking. I can, but unfortunately, technically I can, but I don't practice it enough to be very good at it. And this particular yarn, it just splits a lot. So if I'm not looking, It just doesn't look very good. So this yarn is actually not very easy to work with. Anyway, so at some point, I think like I was like, was it like this year or maybe end of last year? I started thinking about it a lot, and I would go from like, okay, this is like unhealthy. This it's a shopping addiction. It's impulse buying. You just too much yarn. You buy more than you can, need. To the point when I'm like, when I would go completely like on the opposite side, and I would like, there's nothing bad in it. This is like my major hobby. I don't really have many categories, and which is true. Like I don't spend much on clothes. I don't spend much on like makeup or jewelry or accessories or purses, bags. Like I don't know. I don't really like technically like I have budget like for basic things like rent, food, going out to eat out couple of times a week. Like things like that. So basically, I would go from like being super concerned when I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, just this is impulse buying. This is it's addiction. It's like I should buy for a project. It doesn't make sense to buy so much. And then I would, like swing to another side when I'm like, there's nothing bad about it. Yeah, yeah, I buy yarn. I have a lot of yarn, but it's okay. It's my hobby. Like somebody who is a fisherman, they probably have like several rods and many hooks and whatever they buy. And I'm like, maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't be like, because for me, like I will talk about it later, but it's not like, okay, I'm not buying yarn using credit card. I'm not, starving. I'm not starving my animals and I don't know, buying yarn instead. I'm not like, like I have some disposable income. I don't have categories where I extremely overspend. I don't spend much on clothes. I don't buy expensive brands. I mostly like don't buy much clothes, just wear them longer. I don't know what else. I don't buy jewelry. I don't buy makeup and skincare products. I buy most of the stuff secondhand. Like before buying something, I always look like Craigslist or like Marketplace to find something secondhand or sometimes even get something for free because somebody's getting rid of something. I'm like, I can't call myself that I live unpractical lifestyle. So maybe it's not a bad just to have one area of your life, like hobby, where you can, spend a little bit more. So, and I would never like find the middle ground. I would either be like, oh my God, this is bad. I need to do something about it. And then I would go into, it's okay. And when I see like videos when people talk about, like destashing, the influence and stuff like this, I'm always drawn to these videos because I'm trying to gather all this information, all this opinion to formulate my own opinion. And for the longest, I didn't have my opinion, or I had it, but it would not be like stable enough to exist for more than 6 months. And before I go into like, I'm gonna share my opinion in a bit. Again, before I go there, I just want to say this is not the video where I'm teaching you how to live your life or to shame you or to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just sharing certain things that I'm thinking right now, my like thought process. And, you're welcome to share yours. And again, this is not me knowing how to live the life. It's just I'm still working on it. And I think this is the best way because I see sometimes when people who were like extremely, not to judge somebody, but like we're not judging by judging, somebody who was extremely like lavishly spending on yarn turns 180 and then like, oh, I'm the influencer now. And then like 2 months later, again, every video is like a yarn haul, yarn haul, yarn haul. And then again, oh, I'm the influencing. And then again. So that's why I was about to say, like, I never even like to show yarn in my videos because although I don't see any problem with buying too much yarn, I never wanted to like swing people either way. And also, I don't want to be a person who like changes their opinion every month because just, I don't know, it's kind of weird. At the same time, I actually planned the video that I almost filmed but scrubbed, where I was talking about the fact that, I mean, just relax. Just if you buy too much yarn, that's fine. Just buy it, enjoy it. If it's just one, if you're not overspending in all areas of your life, just do it. But then I kind of changed my mind and I didn't post this video because I'm like, you know what? Too many people find excuse to buy more than they need. And I don't want to be like the person enabling them or giving them that excuse. I actually want people to critically look, and by people I mean also myself, to be critically looking at our hobbies, what we buy, why we buy, and stuff like this. We have way too much overconsumption in our lives and in our world. And also, like I see sometimes when people constantly, especially here in America, they complain about economy, they complain about like hardship and stuff like this. And I'm not talking people who live under poverty line who have reasons to complain, just people like middle class, lower middle class. They're like, oh yeah, this is like this and that. And which is absolutely valid to complain, but at the same time, half of the country, like having like Stanley Cups, like participating in the Stanley Cup or La Boo. And I'm thinking like people, you have to decide either you buy things that are not necessary, they're not a life necessity, but then you almost like don't have you shouldn't be complaining about hardships, like because it almost seems like I want to be able to buy 20 Stanley Cups and at the same time, complain how hard is it like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not the same people, but this is how it looks like. Anyway, let me get into opinions part. And you tell me whether you're on my side or on the other side. So, opinion number one. I think in general, the rule should be don't buy yarn unless it's a yarn for a project. In general, there can be excuses when you try a new yarn, you're trying a new fiber you never worked with, or let's say like you heard about particular brand and you're kind of curious what's their quality, what's like, and you're just buying something like for one like project or for like something, just to see. There is nothing bad about it. But in general, like if you like already know a particular brand, like let's say like there are some people who use the same brand to knit over and over, there is no reason to buy something and stash it if you know you can order it anytime. So in general, my opinion is to order for a project. Unfortunately, there is a downside to it. If you watched my podcast, I talked about the fact that I actually did order a couple of yarns for a project this year because I was trying to implement this strategy. But every time I would order yarn online, when it would arrive, it would be like I guess I'm picky, so it would be not the right color, not the right texture, maybe not the right thickness, not the thickness, but like kind of stiffness or drapiness, not the right like flexibility or even like the feeling. Sometimes you get a yarn, you need a swatch, and it's not what you want. So this makes absolutely impossible to buy, for specifically for a project. Because I had a couple of projects when I ordered yarn 3 times and none of the times worked. Ideally, yeah, if you have an actual like offline, brick and mortar yarn store, that's perfect. We actually have a couple of stores like that here in San Francisco. But the problem is the yarn is expensive. It's much cheaper for me to buy online because I can order bobbin yarn, like the yarn on a cone, because it's going to be much cheaper. That's another. Or sometimes they don't have brands that I want to try. So the problem with us, like when we talk, like should you buy yarn for a project or not, the problem is that theoretically this is the way to go and this is the way how I would want to go, but practically it doesn't work. Another example is the color work. So this year I finally like this last winter I finally started doing color work, and I ended up with the issue because if you use several colors, you order them online, when they arrive, you might not like one of the colors. It's much easier if you do lots of color work to open your stash, look at all the colors, touch the yarns, hold them, do several swatches and find the best match. So in this regard, and in my also experience, especially for self-drafting, it is much easier to self-draft items when you have a variety of yarns, variety of colors at home, when you can take them all out, look at them, touch them. I even sometimes put the yarn here, so I can see it every day because it inspires me or it gives me better ideas what pattern to use, what, pattern, stitch pattern to use, what lace to use and stuff like this. Otherwise, I would never come up with what to use it for. So from practical standpoint, I would say if somebody was asking for my advice, I would say if you primarily knit from patterns and you, like, let's say the pattern is released, you buy it, you go order yarn, you need it. This will be the best way to buy for a project. But if you are more like experimental, more creative, you're self-drafting, unfortunately, there is no way for you to buy for a project. You will end up with a stash. And technically, if you need a lot, if you need on a daily basis, having a stash is not an issue. The issue is if you are not knitting on a daily basis and you accumulate stash, because realistically, and this is what the hard truth that nobody thinks about, but it's important to discuss it. Let me get more tea and we're going to discuss it. Okay, so I don't know what's your knitting speed and what kind of projects you need, like whether it's like a small projects or large projects. Like for me, just taking in consideration everything, like how many times I unravel, redo the project several times, how I never can knit from the first, go. I always like do some changes. Maybe I make it bigger, maybe I make it smaller, maybe I change like certain details, like change the neckline, change the sleeve. So it takes me a while to knit. And also, I don't think I'm a fastest knitter. And also, sometimes there are weeks or days when I'm too busy because my dog is my job is related to dogs, and sometimes I have dog sitting clients. And usually, if I have a dog that I'm dog sitting, or if I'm board and train dogs, I don't have much time for knitting. Or it's not like a long hour, so I don't really like get much done. Or for example, right now it's summer, I'm really into sewing. I don't also have that many hours knitting. So the problem is in this case that I can only realistically finish one item per month. For example, like in the last 2 months, I finished 2 items, but I started them like in spring. Okay, almost 3. So I think realistically, I can safely say that I finish 1 garment per month. Maybe I can finish 3 garments in 2 months. There were times when I could do more, but usually that's I think the fastest is probably 3 weeks. So if we are talking about this, like let's say I can make on a slow year I can make 10 garments per year. On a very extremely fast year I can make, let's say, 15 garments per year. So 15 garments per year, like the maximum amount of yarn you need, I don't know, even if, let's say, you're a larger person, you need oversized items. I mean, you don't need more than 10 kilo or 5 pounds of yarns, probably even much less. Like if it's somebody like me, I'm, on a smaller size. Like, for example, the last sweater, where is it? I don't know where is it. Like the last sweater I finished were like 400 grams. So technically, for 10 projects, I need like 5 kilo of yarn, 2-3 pounds of yarn. So think about this. And then if every time I order something, like let's say I order yarn once a month and I order for several projects, I quickly accumulate more yarn that I can realistically use. And in this case, again, it's not bad to accumulate it, but I think it's to be like, you need to have a plan. So like, let's say if I buy more yarn than I need, I should have a moment when I sit down and I think like, okay, what's my plan? Do I have a plan that I destash on a regular basis and I get rid of yarns that I don't need anymore? Do I have a plan that I don't know, I stop buying at some point, or I have like some kind of limitations? So let's talk about limitations. There are several ways to limit yourself. So the one when people say like, okay, I'm not buying anything for the next year, I'm gonna reuse whatever I have. The second approach is that if you limit, like, okay, I can only buy once a month, or I can only buy for a project, or like, so you allow yourself to buy, but there is like very limited amount that you can get. And the third approach that I actually haven't heard often, when you have financial limitations. I tried different approaches. I think I tried everything. And I started thinking like, okay, before I decide how to approach it, like, what am I limiting, how I'm limiting it, I think it's more important to understand what's the goal, what's the end goal. The end goal is to have less. But the problem is if I'm only knitting 1 item per month, even if I try to it's probably going to take me 10 years to get rid of all the stash that, okay, not 10. I think I actually did this calculation. I think editing style here, I just realized I have this much here. And it's actually because like I will need like 4 or 5 years to, knit the same speed I'm knitting now to get rid of my stash. Okay, so what's my plan? I'm not buying any yarn for the next 5 years, or if if I'm like saying like, oh, I'm not gonna buy until I destash, but is it realistic that I'm not gonna buy anything in 5 years? But if I gonna end up buying something, then my stash will grow because normally most people buy more than they use. That's the reality of it. So there should be a plan, there should be understanding. So that's how I quickly realized that destashing is not, it can be a goal, but it's not very realistic goal. And also, it's a pointless goal, but I will discuss it a bit later. So the second one is like, okay, I'm not buying any yarn. So what happened to me when I would not buy anything after like a 6 month, I would get into like, it's almost like, okay, I think I think it's correct to compare it to addiction when you decide, like, or like a diet, when you decide like, I'm dieting, I'm not eating this, I'm not eating that. You like limiting what type of food you're eating. And when you're done with your diet, you just go crazy and you go even crazier than you were before. And obviously, we all know that diets don't work. We also know that limitations for a short period of time, they can be practical. For example, when I did lots of like no shopping, no buying, no spending experiments, they're actually very good because they they teach you a lot about yourself. You can see what are my real habits. Like I remember that I was listening to somebody talking like how they started realizing their spending patterns, and they said like I just realized that every Saturday I used to go to the like yarn store and just like browse through yarns and get something. And when I decided I'm not buying anything, uh, I went to the store a couple of times and I realized it's almost like hard for me to go to the store if I'm not going to buy anything. So she stopped going to the store. But eventually she felt like a void because before she had the whole routine every Saturday. And she said like she almost lost this routine and she didn't know what to do with herself on Saturday. So she broke her routine. And the problem is if you break one part of your routine, especially if it's not extremely unhealthy routine, you might develop other unhealthy habits because something needs to be, replaced. And this is important. That's why, like, sometimes it's good to do this experiment because you can notice certain things, or, like, it's also good to practice your, like, what's called willpower or discipline. Because, sometimes it's very easy to, to just, how to say, just just chase the quick dopamine, just saying like, oh, it pleases me, I'm gonna do it. This pleases me, this pleases me, and not like keep yourself disciplined. But then when we actually need to do something work-wise, or we have new goals or new plans in life, we're trying to implement them, but we don't have that willpower because we always say, it's okay, don't, basically it's there is actually a term, it's called running away from discomfort. When we are not going into discomfort, when we have to tell ourselves, yeah, you don't want to do it, but you have to do it. It needs to be done because there is a reason why you're doing it, because you're doing it for like a long-term goal. So sometimes if you're not utilizing this willpower, next time when you actually need it, it's really hard. So it's a good experiment. I'm not saying anything against it. But the problem with these experiments, people think when they just decide to destash, or when they think I just gonna limit myself from buying, there is no long-term goal because any limitations, they can only be done short-term, but almost no people have that amount of willpower. Otherwise, we will not be sitting here talking about this. Most people don't have this amount of willpower to actually control themselves for long term. So that's why it's very important to understand what's the end goal. And when I was like analyzing it, I was thinking like, okay, I probably like can have like some financial restraint, like financial limitations. So I don't want to limit myself from buying yarn. I want to be able to buy things for my hobby, but I want to, to like to cap how much money I can spend per year. So I decided, okay, this is the amount of money I'm okay even if I waste it, basically buy yarn but don't use it, like this is the amount of money I'm ready to lose or to spend on this particular hobby. And then I split it by months. So something about me, I use apps to track my finances. If you're interested, I use a Monarch app. I think out of all the apps I tried, this is the best, but this is not advertising. I'm just saying what I use, and I'm truly use it. Like, I think I used it for the last like 2 years and a half because I already paid twice for a yearly subscription, and I used the free version before. Yeah, so maybe like 2 years and a half. So this particular app, it can track your spendings, and you can. I also use a budget in there, and I'm not like strictly follow the budget, but at least it gives me the understanding how much I spend per category. And for example, for like hobbies, I have a category hobby in my budget. And usually when I overspend, my app will tell me like, hey, this month you spent extra $50 on this particular category, something like that. So what I did, I decided how much I want to spend per year, and then I split it by month. So let's say like each month I'm allowed to spend, let's say like $100 on knitting. It fits my budget, like it's not a huge amount in relation to my other costs because I live in California. Everything is expensive here. So compared to my rent, to my, like bills, food, groceries, it's not a huge amount of money. Let's say $100. Editing still here again. I just said that my budget for knitting is $100. This is incorrect. I don't treat knitting as a separate part of my budget. The budget I'm mentioning right now is for all of my fiber arts and crafts. So it also includes sewing, it also included embroidery at some point, and whatever I decided else to do. I don't know, crocheting, doing other things with fibers. And also it includes not just buying the yarn or like supplies, but also includes if I buy pattern, if I pay for some courses, workshops and stuff like this. Unless it's like something extremely expensive, like a sewing course I did a while ago was a little bit out of my budget. I still decided to go. But for like a smaller things, they have to fit that budget and it includes everything that I spent on that particular hobby. And the way how it works in this app, this category goes as a rollover. So, like, if let's say, like, it's a January, I have $100 like allowance to spend on knitting, and let's say I only spend $70, so the $30 gonna roll over to the next month. Let's say next month I decide not to buy anything at all. So for the month of March, I'm gonna have 100 from February, 100 from March, plus 30 that was left over from January. So I'm gonna 230. So this way, I technically have like a very like a flexible limitation on myself, like limits, and also it makes me understand like you are allowed to buy yarn, you can buy whatever, but you can think like if you overspend this month, at some point you wouldn't be able to spend the next month. So it makes you so, when we overspend on yarn, this is very emotional part of us. It's like, it's not logical, even when sometimes we try to rationalize, like, oh, I'm just trying to try this new fiber. No, this is emotional. We're just feeling some voids. But this way, you actually almost like okay, look at me knitting and talking. But this way, you turn on the rational part. And the way how our brain works, either the emotional part takes over or the rational, like cognitive part takes over. So when by adding a little bit of rational cognitive, thinking, you can like slow down the emotional part. So every time I'm buying something, I'm thinking like how badly do I want to buy this yarn? So I'm gonna use up my allowance and not be able to buy something else. And I have to say, for like I think a year, maybe slightly less than a year, it was actually very successful. So I could actually get my tea got cold. So I could actually, follow this budget. I didn't overdo it. But then last winter, it happens to me actually every winter. I don't know, maybe I get into some like low moods when I need to fulfill my void even more. And usually, like, I don't know, maybe it happens maybe because of the Black Friday. I don't know. But I remember like November, December, January, sometimes even February, these are the worst month for me in terms of spending. And last year, I went crazy. I don't know what was happening to me. I bought so much yarn. It's crazy. And the sad part, I bought so much yarn, and then come spring, like April, I'm barely knitting because I'm doing my sewing projects. And then come summer, all the yarn I bought in winter, it's a winter yarn. I don't need it because I'm doing like summer projects, and I didn't have yarn for summer projects, so I'm buying more yarn. Doesn't make sense. But okay, let me try to get back to my knitting. But if I follow that rule, you know, that would work. But the reason it actually, wait, where's the hook? What happened? Oh my God, what did I do with the hook? See, it always doesn't happen to you that the hook always disappears. Yeah. So basically, what happened to me, it was a good rule when I was only ordering yarn for a project. But of course, when I started ordering, because I ordered a couple of yarns from Europe. So it was much, it was much cheaper to buy in a bulk. So I don't pay for shipping. Otherwise, the shipping would be like $35 or something. So basically, I could buy like more and, get free shipping, which is interesting trick. And of course, when I had to do this, I obviously overspended my monthly allowance. And that's another reason why it's pointless to have like certain limitations. Because as soon as you break your own rule, you're like, it doesn't matter anymore. We can go crazy. We already, which is such a mental trick that our mind plays with us. Because if you break the rule, you should be like, okay, I broke the rule. That sucks. But in order to get better, I need to immediately go back on my previous, limitations. But unfortunately, it doesn't work this way. As soon as we break the rule, the same like how people in diet, if they, eat something forbidden by their diet, they're like, forget it. Fuck the diet. It doesn't matter anymore. That's another reason why limitations don't work as much as we want them to do. In general, the financial part is somewhat successful for me, but unfortunately not 100% bulletproof. So here, again, go back to motivation. So when people want to destash, I think it's important for us to have like a long-term plan, what I'm trying to achieve. And I think we need to go from the issues. So I was trying to understand what are my issues, and here are my issues. Okay, seriously, I need to be crocheting and chatting. I don't know how other people do. Maybe it just comes with practice, but I can either crochet or talk. So my issues were, if I buy yarn and I don't use it up within the same year, there is a huge risk that the next year I'm not going to like the color, I'm not going to like the texture. If I bought it for a specific project but didn't use it up, I might not want to need this project anymore. So I'm not a very stable person in terms of my tastes, my interests, and stuff like this. I'm very impulsive. I have new hobbies, new things. So in this regard, it's pointless for me to accumulate stash because I'm not going to use it up. And the older the stash is, the less likely I will be knitting it. And this is what I mentioned in my podcast number 3, that all the yarns I bought in 2022, I look at them and I just don't like them anymore. So in this regard, it's pointless for me to accumulate the stash. The second thing, so basically what happens to me, I can, if I try to destash, I go into self, self guilt, in self shame and guilt tripping myself that you have this yarn. It's a high quality yarn, and you probably when you watch my videos, you notice how I always praise this yarn. It's almost like I'm trying to persuade myself. I'm always guilt tripping myself into saying it's such a good yarn. You should use it. It's such high quality. And then I force myself to come up with the project that fits this yarn. I spent hours finding the right pattern. Then I do swatches and I try and try and try and try. It's basically you have a certain food that you have in your pantry. You don't like it and you're trying to come up with something, but you don't like this food. You don't like this. None of the recipes work, but you're trying to force yourself just because you feel shame and guilt. And even if you come up with the project and you're yes, I'm successfully destashed this yarn, but there is a chance you're not going to wear it because this item didn't come from your actual need, from your actual, taste in terms of fashion and style. And this is another reason, again, I'm telling myself, Stella, this is another reason why you should buy for a project. Even if you buy for a project and end up not using it, it's better than you just randomly buying yarns that you want to try, or because you like the color, or because there is a sale, or because you need to order more in order to get free shipping. And then even if you basically you save money in the moment, but then you're going to create basically there's something about the stash that is older than 2 years. It burdens you. I don't know how about you guys, but I feel a burden that I have this yarn and it's sitting there and it tells me, use me, spend me, make something out of me. And it basically, all these yarns are looking at me and constantly asking for my attention. And it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's exhausting. And either you have to be like, I have some friends who are like, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like sometimes we can lie to each other. So I don't know if they truly believe in it. Obviously, I can't, get a glimpse in their mind. But I have some friends who say, like, I buy yarn, I don't care. Like, I don't care how much yarn I have. It's my hobby. Like, I'm allowing myself. But at the same time, I sometimes, like, I have some of these friends when we talk about it, sometimes they do talk about having yarn. Oh, I bought again. And I'm thinking, like, if we could truly allow ourselves to have this large stash, why we even worry that we're buying again? So I think there is like some um, you know, underground burden of, or like feeling that maybe I shouldn't be buying it. So this is one thing. What else? There was something else I was about to say about it. Mm, okay, I said about the burden. I said about the reasons. The problem. We were talking about the problem. Yeah. So the problem number one, it burdens me. It makes me spend time on or spending energy on figuring out how to use it up. And in this case, maybe I gonna use my yarn before I buy a new one is a good solution, or maybe it's not. Maybe in this case, you're better off figuring out. And I actually heard another like YouTuber talking about this. She started actively selling her. So if she realizes the yarn she has, she doesn't like it anymore. She just started. So she has the whole process. She immediately posts it online, marketplace or some other community. She just sells it. And most often than not, she can, especially if it's a yarn on a cone, you can probably sell it for the same amount of money you bought it because it's in general like high quality yarn that's cheaper than the yarn in a ball. And I never tried it, but I'm thinking like maybe this is a way to go, Just have to spend one day making photos, writing descriptions. The only thing I don't know if did you guys ever sold yarn? What I wish there were websites where you can do it. I don't know. Maybe I should find like a local community or something. I don't know. There should be something. One thing, like when I bought a knitting machine, and I was actually planning, I even signed up for some like local meetups for machine knitters, and I was planning to go there. I even like RSVP'd for one, but my social anxiety kicked in the last moment and I didn't go. So maybe I should go there and maybe I should ask people like if, because people who knit with knitting machines, they will be more likely to buy yarn on a cone. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Like instead of forcing myself to use up this yarn, I need to have a system how I just get rid of the yarn if I don't like it anymore. I don't know. Maybe even if you lose money by reselling it, at least you got rid of it. You don't have too much yarn. You don't have, too much stash. In this case, somebody might say like, oh, but financially it doesn't make sense because you're losing money. Then in this case, the option with having a financial budget is the best because at least upfront, you decide how much money you're ready. So like if you decide like, okay, I can spend $100 a month, like $1,200 a year, I can easily waste on yarn. It doesn't matter. It's my hobby. That's how much money I spend. And maybe for somebody that's okay. Or somebody says like, okay, I'm going to spend like $50 a month or like $20 a month. So in a year, it's going to be 200. Okay. Like even if I don't use it, it's just, it's a hobby. Like we always spend money. We spend money, especially like sometimes I shame myself like, oh my God, I spend this much on yarn. And then again, I'm in San Francisco. We go to the restaurant and spend like, I don't know, like $70 for two of us in there. I'm like, you know what? Why I'm complaining about yarn? I already spent $70 just on, or like sometimes $100. And we don't go to fancy restaurants as a regular restaurant. Or we spend like $100 on a restaurant. And like, come on, I could have bought so much yarn. So again, if it's a financial constraint, then you should not tackle like the amount of yarn in the stash. You should tackle like how much you spend. So this is one issue. The second issue, more broader, probably requires a new video, that it's not the yarn that's a problem. By buying yarn, we are like probably fulfilling some emotional gaps. And in order to stop buying so much yarn, technically you need to go to therapist and figure out why am I fulfilling, because because if it's like a shopping addiction, like I was like, I just read a comment the other day when somebody said they buy yarn every week. Okay, I have to say I'm never done this. I was never at that level. I was at the level where I would buy even twice a week, but it would be like for like several months, and then I completely go dry. My addiction goes dry. But I'm not just okay. I don't want it to sound like I'm better than this person. Maybe I didn't do it because maybe financially, if I was in a different situation, maybe I would buy every week. Or maybe because I don't have a store I go to every week. Again, it's not for me to shame the person. And I started thinking about it. Yeah, this is definitely already on a borderline of fulfilling some emotional need, and there is no way you can combat these shopping habits unless you use a discipline or you go the therapy route and figure out, because there is something in us that makes us buy more yarn that we can potentially need. So now we're coming to like a discipline versus therapy. So in terms of discipline, there are patterns that are disruptive that make us buy. For example, for me, what is disruptive? Watching shopping hauls. So if I watch somebody yarn haul, there is a risk I'm gonna buy something. And let me give you an example. I live my life avoiding shopping hauls. But one day I saw this girl discussing this yarn. It's a knitting for order, it's a silk yarn. And she showed it in this beautiful blue color, but unfortunately that color was out of stock. And I was actually looking for that blue color, so I had excuse to buy it. But think of this. She praised this yarn. I went online. If I didn't see this video, I would never go there. So it's it's a disruptive habit. There is actually double. It's a double destructive, double habit. So I went there because I was actually looking for this yarn. So I was like, okay, let me just check it. But that particular color was out of stock. What another person would do, who's not me, was like, okay, this color is out of stock. Let me just come back maybe a couple of months later and see. Instead, I ordered different colors. I was like, let me just buy one ball of each. At least I can, check the quality. Also, I'm into my yellow colors era. I might as well use it as, part of some other project. And I have to say it, but we're not discussing the yarn right now. And I hope you're not going to go and maybe I should not have mentioned the brand. So what's the end story of this? This is a disruptive habit. So if you watch a yarn haul, you were more likely to go buy something that you didn't need, didn't plan to buy, so for me, this is definitely a disruptive habit. And what I do now, when I see somebody in a, knitting podcast do a yarn haul, I just skip it. Unfortunately, you can't completely avoid it. And I try in my knitting podcast not to talk where I buy yarn, what brand and stuff, what yarns I bought. But at the same time, in my last podcast, I did discuss it. So I'm trying to avoid it, but I understand as a blogger, it's kind of hard to avoid it. But at the same time, if it's a pure shopping haul, or sometimes people obviously lots of knitting influencer, they receive yarn for free. And then obviously in return, they have to talk about it. When I see this type of content, I switch it off. And it's sad because I want to know about yarns. I want to know about, what different fibers exist. Maybe sometimes people share some interesting information, but I understand unless I feel super confident, I can't watch it. And in my case, because things like this happen, I try not to watch this content. Second, obviously if you sign up to yarn stores, dyers, I don't know, knitting influencers who review things or who do their own, there are some knitting influencers who do their own yarn, or they have projects with dyers when they have their limited edition. Unfortunately, for most people, it will lead to buying things. If you go to Instagram, there are always advertising there. So unfortunately, you have to do something about it. But also people have this FOMO. They're like, oh, but I want to see what's happening. I want to see the trends, the colors, the ideas, and it inspires me. But in my opinion, there is more disadvantage than advantage. And in terms of my own discipline, I just decided that I'm not following So I'm not following any pattern store. I'm not following any pattern designers on Instagram. I'm not following because I don't want to like spike my interest purchase. Because if I don't know, if it's a good pattern or a good yarn, I will eventually hear about it from somebody else. But unless I am specifically looking for it, I don't need this in my life. And uh, f- unfortunately, most of us are in denial. People like, oh, it's not, it's okay. I can follow these accounts. I'm not going to buy just because I'm following this. But in my experience, if you unfollow them, your purchasing drops. If you stop watching, shopping hauls, your purchasing drops. Unfortunately, that's the way how it is. Some other destructive habits, like again, I never did this. I don't buy yarn with a credit card, but I know, like, I heard about these people, like, oh my god, I had to, to use Klarna, or I put it on my credit card, and this is extremely disruptive because this is already borderline addiction when you're spending money that you don't technically have on something that is not necessary, because this is not knitting is not necessity. I mean, knitting may be a necessity for your mental health, but I'm sure all of us have some yarn to work with, and this is for me, this is something that's like in a block list. I would never put a yarn on a or any like things for the like on a credit. I would never buy it with the money I don't have. I would never if I know, like right now, like I have months that are like low on clients, so I don't make as much income. So usually in my case, like my income fluctuates a lot because there are seasons when there are lots of clients, there are seasons where like super low, and my income can double or drop like twice less. So either way how you look at it. So in my the way how it works, usually if I see I have good months, I start like buying a little bit more things that I was already planning to buy. If I know like some months are super low, I usually try not to spend anything until everything goes back on the high season. But again, for people who have like a stable salary, I guess it's like easier just to have a cap on a monthly budget, like the way how I explained it. And the last, I guess, thing that I realized, like the problem with me, that again, this is very different. There are like type of people that have, like, our brain is wired differently than other people brains. Um, like I don't want to go in a therapy talk, but how to explain it? Like, for example, okay, let me give example with food, or okay, I don't know. I want to talk about food all the time. Okay, let's say you do something fun, something that you enjoy. Let's say you like to go to the cinema, and you receive a certain amount of joy from going there. And let's say, like, we can measure, like, each person when they go to the, I don't know, cinema, they can get this amount of joy to satisfy their, like, oh, it was so cool. It was such a, it's a great thing to do. I don't know, maybe nobody goes to the cinema. I don't go to cinema, but I think it's easier to explain. So this is the amount of joy you receive, and this is the amount of joy you need to kind of feel fulfilled. But then there are other people who need more joy to feel this way. So, for example, for another person to feel this much joy, they need to go to 3 cinemas, or if we're talking about yarn, for somebody, like, they would buy like I don't know, 6 balls of yarn, and they would get this much joy. But for me to receive this much joy, I need to buy, I don't know, 50 balls of yarn. So it's almost, you need more to satisfy the same thing that a regular person would satisfy with less. I don't know if you know what I mean. And this type of people, they usually end up with certain addictions. It can be like really bad addictions, I know, drugs and alcohol, but it can be something that doesn't consider it addiction, but it still is, you know, overspending, shopping, gaming, watching TV nonstop. In my case, watching YouTube, I don't know, 5 hours straight and stuff like this. So it's still like some kinds of addictive behavior when you try to satisfy something that a normal person would probably satisfy by watching YouTube for 20 minutes. I need 5 hours to satisfy the same. And in this case, you just understand that you have this unhealthy. I mean, I'm talking about myself. I understand that in general, I have this unhealthy relationship with buying things. In a moment when I purchase yarn or I purchase something, I truly believe that whatever I'm doing is very logical, very rational. I do need this yarn. And then let's say it's impulsive buying, but I feel like, yeah, I want to need this project. I'm going to start it right away. But over and over, like analyzing, how much yarn I bought and how many patterns I bought and how many projects I started in reality, I realized it's not matching. And then the only reason, or not the only reason, and the only way you can understand it when you can actually like have a tracker of your habits. Like, okay, this is what I bought. This is what I needed. This is what how much money I spent on this project. This is how much money I spent on yarn. This is how much yarn I bought this year. This is how much projects I needed this year. So unless you very, basically you have to look the issue in the eye, unless you do something like this, you're usually like, we usually underestimating, those things. You're like, it's not so bad. But when you start doing this, like collect this data about your own habits, you're like, yeah, I guess it's a little bit problematic. But it takes a certain willpower, discipline, and it takes a certain amount of energy to even decide that I want to change it. So the idea is that when you realize all that, you realize like, okay, I don't have a healthy relationship with shopping. So I need to have some type of limitations, but unfortunately, like with many addictions, you can't tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to do a little bit, because for you to get the satisfaction, you need a lot. So you should have like just discipline, and you also should have like a long-term like goal, some motivation why you're doing this. So as I said, my tools that I use now to kind of like, probably time to close this video. My camera just died. Oh my god! So let me just finalize this video. So what I realized, and I actually hope this footage actually will be saved. So what I realized about myself, that I have unhealthy relationship with shopping habits. Like I used to, I lied to myself that it's not so bad, it's not so bad. But when I analyzed all the aspects, that how much it burdens me to have all this stash, but also I realized, like, unfortunately, this things, and this is probably for another video, it also, the way how I behave around shopping, it actually contradicts with my beliefs, because I believe in the fact that we need to reduce consumerism, that we need to buy less, we need to, like, save the planet, that we need to think about like business wise, because many companies where we shop, they might not be very responsible, so we should not be buying more and more and more to give them a chance to actually just make profits from us without even being concerned about, I don't know, let's say like about how they treat their workers and stuff like so. It contradicts my beliefs and my values to buy so much, but what I'm doing because I can't control myself. So what I realized that there's many reasons for me not to do it, and the only way I can go about it is like some discipline. So either I allow myself like one big like shopping spree once a year, and then for the next 12 months I'm only buying for a project that I'm gonna start in the nearest future, which means like I receive the yarn and I immediately start swatching, and I immediately start a project within a month or like months and a half. Like my motivation is not to have a stash that's gonna feel me shamed or guilty or make me forced to need projects I don't even want to need. My goal is that every time I know I shouldn't be buying something, but I'm actually saying like, nah, I ain't gonna buy it. It just feeds to my disruptive, addictive brain. And next time when I will need to say no to myself, it's going to be even harder. And after I said yes to impulsive shopping 10, 20, 50 times, the next time I will need some discipline. When I need to tell myself, no, you can't be watching YouTube for 5 hours. You need to go and do some work, or you need to go, I don't know, take your dog for a walk. It will be so hard for me to tell myself, like, okay, stop doing bullshit, go do what you need to do, because I don't have this skill. I have a skill of procrastinating, doing what's comfortable, what brings me, instant dopamine, versus doing something what needs to be done, or something that can bring me to the long-term goals. Because unfortunately, to get to the long-term goal, you need to experience discomfort right now. And again, it's a tricky, because like I grew up in a generation when we were like only living in discomfort, like we're forcing ourselves, we're doing things we didn't want to do. And we wanted to give a little bit more freedom to ourselves. But unfortunately, the pendulum swung too much. And now I feel like allowing myself too much and not going in the areas where I need to experience certain discomfort, not going into areas where I need to force myself to have more discipline is also not productive. Yeah. And in the long term and in the broad picture, it's not about how much yarn I'm buying and how big is my stash, because I see nothing bad about having a certain stash, because it's a hobby and I'm planning to need until the rest of my life. So it's okay to have some yarn, but it's more about each particular purchase not to be done impulsively, not to be done because I'm trying to fill the void, not to be done because somebody said something and I have FOMO, I need to go do or buy something. And also, like, being more realistic with myself when I'm doing something. I'm still feeling like, since it's a hobby, I want to feel like more relaxed. I don't want to be restricted. I don't have limitations. But without some limitations, some people like me, I'm not talking it's everyone else, but some people like me, we are unable to exist because we become disruptive. As again, I said, I'm not like, I'm not the person who spends like half of the salary on yarns, but sometimes I do think like, I don't know, maybe I should, I could have spent this money somehow else. Like, I'm sure if I count all the money I spent since 2021, maybe 1/3 of this money could be spent in a different way. It's not the money that's harming me financially, but at the same time, what's the purpose? It's a dead money sitting in a in a box. Anyway, I don't know. Share me what you think about it. See you in my next video.